Hi there, and welcome to the wheelchair transfer training brought to you by Ironwood Springs Christian Ranch. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn more about how to safely transfer our campers, and to thank you for being willing to serve our campers and Christ during your time here at Ironwood Springs. It is appreciated more than you know. To begin, let's talk about what you will learn in this training and its importance to you and our campers. You'll be learning about general wheelchair training guidelines as well as proper transfer methods when helping a camper onto, which is known as mounting, or off from, which is known as dismounting, from a horse, a zipline sling, and onto and off from a snow tube. We have created this training with your safety and the safety of our campers in mind. Following the steps provided is essential to maintaining the safety of everyone at Ironwood Springs. Let's go over some general wheelchair transfer procedures. First, it is important that you figure out what the camper's needs are. Second, prepare the wheelchair. Third, prepare the camper. Fourth, prepare yourself. And fifth, ensure that the camper is comfortable once they have been transferred. As previously mentioned, the first step is determining what the camper's needs are prior to beginning the transfer process. This includes understanding what the camper's preferences are, which may include but is not limited to which side they prefer to transfer towards, how much assistance they need from you or others, their preferences for where you place your hands or body during the transfer, or anything else that they believe you should know prior to completing the transfer. Some information you might consider asking is whether the camper is able to use their arms and or legs to help you with the transfer, if they are able to bring their arms to their chest and cross them, or keep them crossed if you place their arms in that position, if they have any sores or sore spots, medical devices, a catheter, and the likelihood of muscle spasms and what you should do should those happen, etc. To prepare the wheelchair for a transfer, make sure that it is in the optimal position. In general, a 45-degree angle is the best position for a transfer. However, the wheelchair should be parallel to the transfer bench in the case of adaptive ziplining. However, this does not always work for all campers, and therefore you should be sure to follow their lead for facilitating the transfer, as they know what works best for their individual circumstances. That may mean keeping some parts of the wheelchair on or taking some off, depending on their wheelchair setup, their abilities, the associated transfer surfaces, and other factors. This is something that you should consider as you look at the setup of their wheelchair and the transfer surface that they are going towards. In all instances, it is important that you ensure the brakes are on if it is a manual wheelchair, or that it is turned off if it is a power wheelchair, prior to beginning the transfer. Now that the wheelchair is prepared for the transfer, begin preparing the camper. You can do so by providing an overview of what you plan to do and making a plan with them as far as the process for the transfer. As you do each step, provide step-by-step instructions of what it is that you are doing. Also inform the camper that you will count to 3 prior to transferring them. If the camper is able to do so independently, have them scoot to the edge of their wheelchair. If the camper is not able to do so independently, you can facilitate this process. To facilitate this process, put your legs so that your knees are outside of the camper's. Place your hands on the back of the camper's upper thighs, right above the knees, and simultaneously scoot the camper towards you. If they are unable to hold themselves up, place your hand or hands on the camper's upper back or shoulder area to hold them in the upright position. Before you actually begin transferring the camper, you must also prepare yourself. To do so, make sure that your feet are about shoulder width apart, with one foot about a half step ahead of the other. Make sure that you keep a neutral or straight spine rather than beginning to use your back. To make sure that you do so, bend your knees slightly and get as close to the camper as possible. When you pivot to facilitate the transfer, pivot utilizing your feet rather than your back. And finally, breathe in before you lift the camper and breathe out while you are lifting the camper. A 2-person transfer is always preferred for the safety of yourself, other ambassadors, our staff, and our campers. If the camper and or whoever is attending the camp with them does not state any preferences for transferring, please follow these general guidelines. In a 2-person transfer, person 1 should place their arms under the camper's arms, holding onto the camper's crossed forearms around the chest area. Meanwhile, person 2 should hold on to the back of the camper's thighs right above the knees. Once again, a two-person transfer is always preferred. However, we want you to be prepared should a situation arise when a one-person transfer must occur for one reason or another. In this case, please place one hand on the camper's upper back and one hand on the mid to lower back. Pivot using the heel of the foot that is in the direction of the transfer and the toes of the foot opposite the direction of the transfer. Be sure to bring the camper's weight all the way forward through their legs when you are able and lift with your legs as you pivot towards the transfer surface. Place your arms under the camper's armpits, holding onto the camper's mid to low back. Once the camper has been transferred, please ensure that they are comfortable and adjust accordingly until they or whoever they are with communicate that the camper looks or feels comfortable. Before we begin discussing the process of transferring a camper onto or off from a horse, let's talk about the parts of the saddle that will be important for you to know. These parts include the horn and the stirrups, which are labeled accordingly in this picture. Getting onto a horse is also called mounting. For this process, a staff member or ambassador will serve as the leader, bringing a horse into the mounting area and positioning the horse. Meanwhile, there will also be at least one staff member or ambassador on each side of the horse, totaling a minimum of 3 people present to assist a camper in mounting or getting onto a horse. Please ensure that the horse is ready for the camper to get on by checking in with the horse leader. Also ensure that all of the general guidelines for wheelchair transfers have occurred. For a camper who can walk, please provide verbal instructions on how to get onto and off from the horse, and ensure that the required 3 staff members or ambassadors are present to ensure the camper's safety and the safety of the assistants as well as the horse. As always, a 2-person transfer is preferred. To facilitate this transfer onto a horse, person 1 should place their forearms under the camper's armpits, while person 2 provides support at the rider's calves or ankles. Together, the 2 individuals assisting should count to 3 and then lift the camper onto the horse, keeping the camper's legs on the left side of the horse as you are looking at the center of the arena. Next, have the camper grab onto the horn of the saddle if they are able to do so. Then help them situate so that they are comfortable and safely seated on the saddle. The camper can do so by putting weight through their legs with their feet placed in the stirrups and/or through their arms using the horn or saddle. If a camper is unable to do so, you may ask for permission to bring the camper upright by pulling onto the camper's waistband. The camper can facilitate the process of getting onto a horse comfortably by putting their left foot into the stirrup and swinging the right leg up and around the horse's backside. If a camper cannot do this, staff members or ambassadors can bring their camper's right leg up and over the front of the horse over their hair. Next, the leader will confirm with the camper and the assisting staff and ambassadors that the camper is ready to begin riding prior to having the horse move. To dismount or get off from the horse, the leader will bring the horse back into the mount-dismount area where the camper began the ride. Once again, there should be 2 additional staff members or ambassadors present to help the camper get off from the horse. Prior to beginning this process, the leader will verify that it is safe for the camper to begin getting off from the horse. Next, the other individuals assisting with the transfer will verbalize that they are ready to assist the camper. The camper will then take their right foot out of the stirrup and bring their foot up and over the horse. If the camper is unable to do so by themselves, then the person to the right of the camper, as you are facing the arena, will take the camper's foot out of the stirrup and bring it up and over the horse. The other person will grab the camper's lower legs, while the person to the right of the camper, or another person if they are present, grabs the camper under their armpits, holding onto the camper's forearms with their arms crossed in the chest area. Ensure that you prepare yourself to facilitate this transfer by also following the general wheelchair guidelines that were previously discussed. Should a camper require additional support in the event that they are unable to hold themselves up, a staff member will sit behind the camper for the duration of the horseback ride. The staff member will get onto the horse after the camper and get off from the horse prior to the camper. This person will be present in addition to the 3 other staff or ambassador members, one being the leader, one on each side, and the individual who is also on the horse throughout the entirety of the ride. Step 1. Place the wheelchair parallel to the tub transfer bench. Step 2. Take off the arm or footrests or other parts of the wheelchair if it is deemed useful. Third, put brakes on or power the wheelchair off. Fourth, inform the camper of the process along each step. Fifth, bring the camper to the edge of the wheelchair. If they need help with this process, please place your knees outside of the camper's knees, bringing their legs straight up and lifting at the back of their upper thighs and scooting them toward you, holding their upper back and shoulder area to keep them upright if needed. To demonstrate this, please watch the video on the next slide. When utilizing 2 people to facilitate a transfer onto the adaptive zipline, Person 1 will hold the camper's crossed forearms at their chest, bringing their arms under the camper's armpits, as pictured here. Person 2 will cradle both arms around the camper's calves, the middle of the lower legs, holding below the knees but above the ankles, as pictured here. As always, please avoid completing a transfer with only one person. Should a situation arise when it is necessary to transfer a camper using only one person, place one hand on the camper's upper back and one hand on the camper's middle to low back. Next, ensure that all other general wheelchair transfer guidelines have been followed and that you are utilizing the technique for a one-person transfer that was previously demonstrated, wherein the individual has their knees placed outside of the camper's knees and either has the camper bring themselves to the edge of the wheelchair or they assist with the scooting of the camper to the edge of the wheelchair. Finally, the camper's weight will be brought down through their legs if possible, and you will pivot using the heel of the foot that is in the direction that you are transferring towards and the toes of the foot opposite the direction you are transferring towards. Now, let's talk about snow tubing setup. You will follow all general wheelchair transfer guidelines during this process. The camper will go down on a tube in the middle with one staff or volunteer on each side of him or herself. You will go down with the camper and then a snowmobile will bring the camper back up the hill. For a snow tubing transfer, at least 2 staff members or ambassadors must be present. We prefer that you have 3 that can facilitate any assistance when needed. However, at least 2 people must be present in addition to the camper, with one person on each side of the camper. You will place your arm around the camper's back underneath the armpit, and your other arm holding the camper directly above the back of the knee on the lower thigh area as pictured here. You will also want to make sure that you maintain a neutral spine as pictured here, and once again, make sure that you are also following all of the general wheelchair transfer guidelines. Here we have provided you with a list of references that were utilized in addition to the staff expertise of individuals at Ironwood Springs Christian Ranch Camp. Again, we thank you for taking the time to be an ambassador for our campers and for Christ. Your choice to do so will impact campers for many years to come. We look forward to seeing you and serving with you soon.